Welcome to A Case for America. I am Austin Hepworth, and I'm here along with Michael Hepworth. Today, we are looking forward to talking with you about some of the morality that makes America what it is. One of the reasons we talk about morality is because we view America, liberty, the number of the systems here, even the legal system, as being intricately woven with morality and principles of morality. Now, some people ask where that morality comes from. We aren't necessarily making an argument for or against at the moment where it came from. There's certainly people that can look to different teachings and different philosophies over time, but we are trying to focus on what the morality is that makes America what it is, because to us, the balance of liberty is that the law is necessary to pull us out of anarchy, but morality is necessary to keep us from tyranny, where the law has to make all decisions. And there is a moral code, a fundamental moral code that underlies America. And if we understand what it is, we do better with it. This is also talked about in the song America the Beautiful. It talks about confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty and law. And we focused for a lot of the podcast so far on that liberty and law portion. And we are looking now at this portion of confirm thy soul in self-control. And so one of the underlying moral principles that's deeply woven into the Constitution and deeply woven into any system of liberty is the moral presumption that people are inherently good for the most part. On a societal-wide level, there's going to be more good than bad. And one of the reasons that a liberty-based society has to adopt that moral principle is that if people were not inherently good, people could not then make good decisions for themselves. But liberty presupposes that if left to themselves, people will, for the most part, make good decisions and make decisions that are proper, wholesome, virtuous, helpful to society. You can put in a lot of different adjectives there. And so in America, we have this interesting, you could say, conflict or tension where we see so much bad. And one reason we see so much bad is because of the internet, the 24-hour news cycle, where bad is kind of put up. And we see if there's a killing in a single state, we can see it, make it across the national news. And our perception of people gets very warped by what we see online. Even just, if you even think about our perception of good in people's lives, it gets warped as well. If you log on to Facebook or something else, you see generally people posting good things from their lives. Oh, someone graduated, someone had a baby, someone got married, look at this cool trip we took. And pictures are these amazing snapshots where no matter how sad we feel inside, no matter how dark we feel inside, suddenly when a camera's pointed at us, we smile. And just, whether it's even intentional or not that we're trying to look good, we just smile for a camera. And so those pictures get posted. And they can present a very optimistic view of life, but generally that makes us feel worse inside because we're struggling, but we don't see others struggling as much. The same goes for evil, where we have, again, I'd say two paths playing out in an interesting way. One is we assume people's lives are better than they are, and the other is we're assuming that the whole world's bad and gross and ugly because of what we see in the news. Neither one's entirely true. And from a liberty perspective, I can go to the park still and have a great time. And I can go to the library, I can go learn things, I can walk into Costco. And there is some potential for something bad to happen or for some lawlessness to break out. But that potential is so low that I've experienced very little of it in my life. And if I look at the sheer total of transactions and situations in my life that have gone well and gone right, the number of any criminal conduct I've run across is very low compared to the number of good situations and the things that went appropriately. And one reason these things go appropriately is because people choose to make good decisions. Most people aren't out seeking a way to harm others. Most people don't want to harm other people. They don't enjoy that. And there is harm that comes. Sometimes it's unknowing. Sometimes it's due to conflicts that we may not be able to fully reconcile, such as in a marriage or something. But most people aren't out seeking to harm others. We're trying to live a life. Sometimes we don't think about other people. But still, this fundamental principle that people are inherently good pervades a lot of American law, a lot of American society, and it's reflected, I believe, in constitutional principles that talk about things like due process, where everyone is given a fair process before the law. The law doesn't say, the Constitution doesn't say, only treat people well that are inherently good inside. Anyone that's bad, let's just kick them out of society. It doesn't say that. And we have this notion that you have to be actually proven guilty. You actually had to have committed a crime to be put in jail. We don't put people in jail prior to the commission of a crime because we believe that up until that point in commission, people can choose not to. And many people choose not to. And then if you look at notions of equality, 14th Amendment that puts in equality, we're treating all of us equally. The law isn't coming out and saying, yeah, everyone gets the constitutional protection except the inherently evil. And the fact that the law says, the Constitution and the law say, we have to treat people equally, we have to give them the similar status, it's based on this moral presumption that people are inherently good. Michael, curious if you have thoughts on that or additional comments on that basic premise.
Yeah, it's also interesting to look at, if you take the side where people are not inherently good and either they're inherently bad or there's a mix and a match, then the question becomes, how do you govern at that point? How can you identify those that are inherently good? Or if everybody's inherently bad, what's the use of government? So just by the mere fact that we say we live in a country that allows individuals to vote, to decide for themselves who they think best represents their rights, their morality, we're basically saying we believe there's inherent goodness in everybody. That doesn't mean that we believe with or we agree with decisions that other people make. Some people pursue what they believe to be good in a manner that we might disagree with. Some people make poor choices that are not good, but that capacity to make those choices is within all of us, and it's evidenced by the style of government that we prefer, that we live with. I think it's also evidenced by the nature of our society today. Living life is a difficult thing to do. Being on this earth is not an easy thing. There's a book called The Mainspring of Human Progress by Henry Grady Weaver. And he said, speaking of how difficult it is to live, he said, if down through the ages, men and women hadn't stood up to the job of living, if they hadn't taken risks, faced dangers, suffered exhaustion beyond exhaustion, and kept on fighting and working in the faint hope of victory, then there would be no human being left to tell the story. Living is a tough job. Only good fighters can make a go of it. It takes people who are looking to make things better for themselves and for others around them to kind of build this world we have today, where we're still trying to help others. We're trying to do a lot of good, and I think more so there are people striving for that than otherwise. And to your point, we don't always see it. We're not as interested in clicking on a news story about a mother and father that took care of their children for a day. It's not very exciting. It's not very interesting, probably because it's rather normal. That's just something that lots of people end up doing, and it's a good thing. What we do end up clicking on is the problem, when something bad happened in a family. And that's more abnormal and it catches our attention. But that ends up being what we see a lot in the world, and we think that must be happening everywhere. We forget that all our neighbors around us are doing just fine, and we're doing just fine, and things continue to go on. That the bad is an exception, and that's kind of why it's interesting. That's why it draws our attention, because the good is just so mundane. We're all kind of doing it, and that isn't to say that everything's going well for everybody, but it's far more common than is the bad. And so, yeah, it's a matter of realizing what you're seeing, what you're ingesting, and saying that doesn't describe everybody. Not everybody's making a poor decision. There's lots of people out there making good decisions. Maybe I don't always agree with their decisions, but that doesn't mean they're not directed towards what they believe to be good.
Yeah, and it's I've thought often about that effect online of clicking on the things that are abnormal. One reason why it's newsworthy, one reason why we do click on it is because it is a shock to us. And again, it's interesting how our minds work, because we then go, oh, I hear this all the time now. The world's getting so dark. But it's still a shock to us every time we hear it, because it's not our experience in the normal world. We go out and we go to school, we go to work, we go to church, we interact with a lot of good people. And I think all of us probably know a good person that would say, yeah, that's a really good person. And I know far more people that I would say are a really good person than I know people that I would say are a really bad person. But again, going back to the social media thing, I was asked recently, Utah has a lawsuit against social media companies alleging that they're harming all these teens. And I fully believe that social media can be harmful to teenagers. I believe it can be harmful to adults because it doesn't reflect reality, and it can be addicting. There's all kinds of issues with it. But at the end of the day, I was really thinking about, we're blaming this social media companies because they say they've created this incredible algorithm that just addicts people. And I kind of look at it a little differently. They have an algorithm that knows us well. I will give them that. But I believe the algorithm was created, it's kind of a mirror of us. It's a mirror of what a lot of our responses are inside. And it's not even to say that we're naturally bad. It's just to say that when it comes up, like you said in the news, and we go to click on something, we don't click on the article that says, hey, dad took care of his kids for 40 years, stayed true to his wife. We click on the one that says, dad shot and killed his wife and kids. And the news, when they're based on, when their revenue and lifeblood is based on advertising, and they have to pay people to do things, and they need money to come in, they're going to put out articles that get clicks. And if they put out these really nice articles that just reinforce the status quo, we don't click on it. And so the algorithms know that, and they then start to feed us things that we click on, because it's their job to get clicks. It's their job to get content watched. And then we can continue to consume it. And at some point, I think we have to take a step back and say, why am I still watching these types of videos? Why am I still consuming these things? What is it that I'm getting from it? And we need to take some responsibility for that. But that's kind of an aside that it still ties into this topic of, are people inherently good? Because most of our views of whether people are inherently good or not are based in what we see online. Now, some of us can have situations where something really bad did happen to us. There are some very horrible things that some people do to other people. And it can be very difficult for those people to trust again, and that's understandable. But even in that scenario, for most people still, if there was a serious abuser of some sort, it's not everyone in their life. And that's where I think we still need to take the step back to say, but there are people that didn't do that. There are people that chose not to. There are people that, went and built. There's people that donated money. There's people that did whatever. And these things help us recognize that our world is full of people, like you said, who are fighters. They're here fighting against a natural state of affairs. Something I believe from a personal religious perspective, I do believe very strongly that human nature isn't 100% pure. I do believe very strongly that we have tendencies inside us that are wrong, bad, or evil. And religion often refers to this as the fallen state, or the natural man, or these kind of fallen conditions. Even from an evolutionary standpoint, it would be that, well, we had survival instincts, and these survival instincts are still there playing a part in our decision making. And so some people will look to those and they'll say, yeah, something bad happened. Yeah, I felt darkness. I felt impulses to do bad things, or I've acted on those and done bad things. I don't view myself as inherently good. But again, that's a short-sighted picture of humanity. Those things exist, but humanity is progressing. The world has moved past kings and queens that just go to war with each other. What made us progress? Even in America, we had slavery at the beginning, but we've moved beyond that. What made us move beyond that? It wasn't that people were inherently evil that made us move beyond that. It's that overall, these things that are present in our situation, in our society, they are overcome through the inherent goodness in people, the collective effort that starts to arise, and progress happens. And so to me, when I look at history and I see bad things, yeah, there's bad things, but the amazing thing to me about history is we overcome those. Something happens. We're not forever stuck in these things. We overcome. And yes, there's issues today. Nothing's perfect. We're still working. But overall, we're still on a trajectory of improvement and progress from a moral perspective. And that, I think, is exciting. And we can look at that and realize that in a condition of liberty, what America essentially is saying is you can't look to the law to save you in all situations. Be a moral agent. Act, do, go through things, talk about things, make changes happen. For example, if you want to get rid of hatred in society, you can't outlaw it. You cannot outlaw hatred. Now, you may make it so that you outlaw the manifestation of it, or the words spoken, or actions taken, but there's no way to outlaw hatred in someone's heart. And the more the law seeks to punish or repress that, the more hatred and enmity there will be. Force does not remove hatred or anger. It can compound it, but it doesn't remove it. And so we as a people have to say, if we want to remove hatred and progress as a society, how do we remove it from our lives and our hearts? And then how do we share that with other people? And this is part of the great moral journey, the great journey of progress. And it's one of the responsibilities of liberty is to recognize the truth or the moral principle that there is power in truth. There's power in light. If you share it, others will embrace it. And we as a people have a duty to then exercise and share morality. And right now, there's a push in society to not do that. Say, don't tell me what to think, don't tell me how to act. Now, I'm actually going to share with you that you'll be far happier if you get rid of that hatred. I can tell you that. And I can tell you that, share with you my experiences. And I can go and teach about morality and teach about how there are things that make us far better. And then I allow that. I don't go and try and force it on people, but I share it and I let that light work and take root in people and let them be comfortable with some patience and some faith to let that change take place. Because again, if people are inherently good, if we've survived as a country for over 200 years, 250 years, basically, then we need to really recognize there's power in this notion. People are working for good, and we can have some faith in that. Do you have any thoughts
Yeah.
there to pass along, Mike?
Yeah, let me jump in real quick. You're talking about how people today, we generally like to say, don't tell me what to do, and then simultaneously claim that that's the right thing to do. So we still like to make a moral call. We're just trying to push it so high that we can't talk about specific actions. Um, eh, Sometimes, though, like C.S. Lewis said, he said, our leisure, even our play, is a matter of serious concern. Now, he attributes this to God and Satan, but we can kind of pull something out of this. He says, that is because there's no neutral ground in the universe. Every square inch, every split second is claimed by God and counterclaimed by Satan. And what I see a lot of today is every time somebody says something or does something, one group wants to claim it as good, another group wants to claim it as bad. Everything that's said or done. We have this inherent knowledge that when we make decisions, they can lead towards good or bad ends. And we're really, in some cases, getting very specific about when we call things out, when we don't call things out, but we want to claim everything to good or to bad, except for when it comes to, well, don't tell me, what to do with my life. I can do whatever I want to do with my life. But everything we do has that good or bad outcome. It is good or bad. And it's up to us to, like you say, speak out on morality, talk about what we think is right and what we think is wrong. We don't have to go out and be condemning people. We can discuss actions. I think one of the dangers of talking about right and wrong is that we tend to vilify individuals. We say this person's bad and this person's good, forgetting that I think there's goodness in all of us and there's bad, as you mentioned, in us. And what are we cultivating inside ourselves? We're cultivating more good, more bad. Did we make a mistake and we gave in to some of the bad at one point in time? But we tend to like to, especially politically, look at an individual and say that person's bad. But I don't think that does us much good to talk about morality when we just take all of a person and say they're bad. This Jordan Peterson said this in the political realm. He said in the political realm, in some sense, you have to defeat your enemy because you have to win the election and the other people have to lose. It's a binary choice. But so often I see in partisan discussion the proclivity to assume that all the ill will and malevolence resides on the other side of the chamber, and that's a big mistake. We all need a place to place the existence of malevolence because malevolence clearly exists, and we all suffer from the weight of malevolent history. But the best way to localize that malevolence is inside of you. And to remember that the enemy that you are fighting with, the greatest enemy that you will ever fight with, is in your own heart. And I really like that because he references that proclivity inside of all of us to kind of make mistakes at times. And we can't just look at one political side or one person and say they are the problem, they are the enemy. When we all have those mistakes that we make in our lives, but we're not always doing that. We all have that goodness that's inside of us. Just one more quick quote on this same topic. This is Alexander Solzhenitsyn in his book, The Gulag Archipelago. He says, if only it were all so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and to destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. And who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? So back to that idea of that there's goodness inside all of us. There's also evil inside all of us. And what are we cultivating? Are we trying to choose more good and to build? Are we giving into some poor intentions occasionally? And then to recognize that that's in everybody. We look at somebody else and say they're the problem, they're the evil one. We're forgetting that battle is fought in each and all of our own hearts. And so that's kind of the principle this country was founded on, the individual side of morality, where every person needs to be making choices themselves. We can't just look to the other side and say it's their problem. We could just get rid of those other people, this country would prosper. That's just not true. It's something we have to address inside each and every one of us.
Yeah, and I think that America's, again, one of its founding moralities is it just welcomed people from all over the world. Believe what you will and whatnot. And I think that one of the things that gets lost quite often in debates today. And this is something you noted, but to give it a little bit more specificity, to even drill down to things associated with the trans movement. There's some people that argue there's only two genders, and some people that say, no, there's a whole lot of them all across the board. And again, people are trained to law for the resolution of either of those issues. And I go back to it and say, well, let's just, whether or not there's only two genders, let's say that someone believes that, there's certainly people that don't believe or feel or experience that. And so it is possible in life, you know, I've experienced things, I felt things that weren't true. So it's a possibility that we feel things that aren't true. But I'm just saying that there's a discussion about what's true or not, and that debate's going to go on for a while about how many genders there are. But then there's a whole different level of just, well, what do people experience? And do we have a place in our society for everyone or not? Are we really talking about, you know, trying to exclude people? What are we really talking about with laws around these issues on either side? And to me, I see very little talk about, well, what is the law's proper role in this scenario? And how do we approach that? How do we make America a place that says we're big enough for everybody here? There's a place, there's worth inside everyone. If you feel something that I believe isn't true, does it mean that, you know, there's not a place for you here? And I think the answer has to be no. And I think we really need to look at our hearts to say, well, so what do we do? If there's, you know, we, for example, just even go into the bathroom policies, if there's a boy that feels like a girl and they dress as a girl, and if we say you have to go in the boys' restroom, well, they go in there and might get beat up by the other boys, or harassed or whatever. They don't feel comfortable in there. The girls don't feel comfortable with them in the girls' restroom. And so then what do we do? You know, society is changing in the sense of people are talking about things more. Maybe this has already always existed. I don't know. But the point is more, when we look at morality and the law, there is some morality that the law should embrace, such as, I think most people will agree with this, thou shalt not kill. We're not going to go out and murder people in cold blood and be okay with that. So the law is going to say, to pull us out of anarchy, give us this place where people can't kill. We're not going to steal from each other. You know, private property we've determined is one of the moral principles of America. We're going to let people own that and protect that. And those, some levels of that morality is made, and then just kind of a what's necessary basis for society to work. Some of it's a conscious choice about what might make us richer, such as the private property thing. And people will challenge notions of that. There's people that want to do away with private property rights and change how those things are structured. But the point is more, there still though has to be a point at which law and morality, where law doesn't embrace all morality, and it has to leave morality to people to work it out. And I think that America and its whole system would be helped so much if we started from a place of a few assumptions associated with the morality that people are inherently good. One is to assume that people are trying their best. We don't like to make that assumption. We like to instantly criticize people and demean people and judge people. It tends to satiate our pride some. But I've been quite interested. I learned this concept, probably been 4 or 5 years ago. And it's been fascinating to me to see how much better my interactions with people have become when I assume they're trying their best. And if something didn't come out the right way, if it came out offensive, if they did something kind of crazy, just to take a step back and go, well, I must not know what's going on, because that's not what I would have expected. And as I've been able to just change my own heart to say, assuming the best in people, things have really improved a lot. I'm far less stressed. I interact better with people. And honestly, I don't feel I've been taken advantage of anymore. I still will ask people to sign a contract with me if I'm doing work with them or different things. But I do try to have that assumption. And that assumption can go so far in, again, when we look at this, to say, okay, assume the best in people. And then second, look at it from the perspective of, if the law is going to step in, it's going to create a winner or a loser. It is going to make a definitive statement about something we won't tolerate. And when law exists, it needs to be enforced. And so as a society, is it a problem the law really needs to solve? Or is it a problem that the law needs to allow individuals to solve and to go through and deal with? And again, something like murder, I think the law should solve that. Once you're dead, you're dead if you've been murdered. And we should try very hard to stop that from happening. But a lot of these other issues that we talk about, I think, may actually fall in the realm of moral responsibility. And we have to approach it from the perspective of, people are inherently good. Even if I disagree with an action, disagree with a reason, disagree with whatever someone talks about, it doesn't mean that I have to try and exclude them or push them out or not recognize the things that they're talking about. And I should work to find a solution to that. That's part of the way that society progresses. And again, I'm not here pitching that means we have to let boys into girls' restrooms. I think, though, the discussion becomes far larger of just, well, we certainly created bathrooms a certain way for a long time. Why? Let's dig a little deeper. Why do we still have privacy issues in bathrooms? Why can't we create a bathroom that doesn't have privacy issues? And we can get rid of so many things if we just build things a little bit differently. And granted, we have things in place currently, and we still have to deal with that. But to go through and say that our society has to reflect certain things, I don't think is necessarily healthy, when we can look at some of the underlying things and say, these issues wouldn't be as big if we approached it slightly differently. What if our building codes were different? What if we respected people's privacy a little bit more? I know I've never been comfortable. It was the Delta Center here in Utah. You walk in the men's restroom and they just have a boatload of urinals all next to each other, no dividers, nothing. There's not really much privacy there. And I always thought, why do we do this? It was a money decision, not required. There's other options. And so, again, these are kind of examples to say, if we change the way we approach people, I believe very strongly we start to change the outcomes we get from a situation. If I treat someone as the enemy that needs to be won or beat or whatever, it starts to create a very wrong response back, because now they're defending themselves and they're on the defensive. If instead I can say, well, I still have morality I live by, I still have principles I live by, here's what they are, but I also recognize that you're coming from a place of experience of principles. There's something inside you that's pushing you this way. Let's figure out if there is a better way. That's progress. And again, not to say either one has to give up their principles, just can we start to talk about how to address the truths that exist in both? And to me, that's America's way. We left this state of liberty here because we trusted people to look for solutions, to look for real solutions to real problems, and to make that happen. And when necessary, for the principles at play, we use law to keep it from anarchy, but we use morality to keep it from tyranny. And if we re-embrace that, America, I think, will progress so much. We can start getting rid of a lot of hatred if we return to morality as a solution to problems rather than law. Michael, do you have anything else for us today? Any other thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, more along those lines, if we have decided that our way is correct and it has to be enforced by law, then we are seeking a tyrannical solution at that point to put down all those that disagree with us. So it would be funny to say my way's right. We want liberty, but to get liberty, I need to instill tyranny. You can't pursue that as a solution and then think that you're actually getting liberty. It would just get turned around against you. The tyranny will be turned around on you. So we have to be very careful when we say this is right and we need it at all costs. That's what we get with tyranny. Instead of saying how can we solve this in our communities, in our families, and it takes a lot of effort on our part. It's easy to be apathetic today. We want to, enjoy our lives, take our vacations, have fun with our friends and our family. But it takes some dedicated effort to paying attention to what's going on around us, to being willing to stand up for the things you believe in, speaking on what you believe your morality to be. We've kind of geared our world today to not breed these kind of attributes in ourselves. George Orwell talked about this in his short book, The Road to Wigan Pier. He said, as for such qualities as loyalty or generosity, etc., in a world where nothing went wrong, which is what we continue to seem to strive for, they would not only be irrelevant, but probably unimaginable. The truth is that many of the qualities we admire in human beings can only function in opposition to some kind of disaster, pain, or difficulty. But the tendency of mechanical progress is to eliminate disaster, pain, and difficulty. We've really worked hard to make life convenient and easy, and that's fine. I'm not here to say we need to stop that. I want to say we need to acknowledge that with life getting convenient and easy, we need to proactively try to engage in positive qualities, loyalty, generosity, morality, these kinds of things, because they're not going to be bred naturally by the world around us. We have to consciously choose them. When it's might be scary to say something that you believe in, you should do it. That's how you breed these good qualities. Stand up and speak to what you believe in. And maybe you'll say something wrong. That's when we rely on the goodness in other people to say, hey, that's okay. We all say things wrong. Let's reevaluate. Let's try to figure it out. But it's only if we're having these dialogues with each other, if we're actually trying, if we acknowledge that it takes effort to build and cultivate the goodness that's already inside of you. We can't just sit back and not do anything and cultivate goodness. We have to actively pursue it.
That's a great point to end on. And just to fill that in a little more, I like to think about the biblical story of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were taken as slaves into Babylon. It was the richest place in the world at the time. And the king ends up liking these young lads for some reason, brings them into his palace, and says, go ahead and eat. It's all here for you. And the riches of the world were before them. They could partake. And they consciously said, no thanks. I'll take some basic food because I actually want health, physical and spiritual health, more than I want the things of this kingdom. And to me, it's a fascinating story, and it's one I believe we're at the same place. To your point of being, it's required now to consciously choose a lot of these good attributes. One reason we may feel that some of these things are waning is because maybe we're not consciously choosing them as much as we should be. We're so rich in our country today. You don't have to make your family situation work out. There's enough riches that you can get divorced, you can move on, you can make it work. And you don't have to be nice to a neighbor. You can hole up inside, you can tune someone out on social media. If someone's annoying you, you can just avoid them for the most part. We have so many options. You can even switch jobs, you can do different things rather than undertaking some of these principles that do take sacrifice. It does take hard work to be good. and to intentionally choose some of these principles when we don't have to. And so if we want liberty, if we want America to be what it should be, we need to make daily decisions to do the hard thing. And like you said, if you're really afraid to say something, maybe it needs to be said. If you're really afraid to tell someone that they hurt you, maybe you need to do it. Maybe you need to follow up with someone that you misunderstood. Maybe you need to share a truth or a moral principle, and in a kind way. I'm not saying just go out and say, you're all heathens. It's more to look at it and say what really needs to be talked about and discussed, but to make these hard decisions. And I really like that point because, again, we do the hard thing, we do the right thing because it grows good in our world. That's the balance that keeps liberty in place. That's the balance that keeps America progressing, is when individual people make hard decisions to do good things. It's what our whole Constitution and society is predicated on. We don't have enough police to police everyone. It's not possible for the law to legislate what's in our hearts. That's up to us. We give that life through the things that we say and do. So we encourage you to think about some of those things, some of the good things that you should do. It may be hard, it may take a sacrifice, but do them trusting that your life will benefit and that goodness will grow in America, because people are, at a fundamental level, still inherently good. And there's so much good we have to look forward to. So thanks for being with us today. We appreciate it. And we will follow up with you next week and talk more about a number of these principles.